Okay. Good evening, everybody. This is Mike McCoo, Chairman of the Wellington Board of Finance, calling to order the regular meeting of the Wellington Board of Finance, Thursday, November 17th at 7:07 p.m. Seating of alternates. We are not expecting Jeffrey tonight, and I don't believe we have any alternates online. Oh, yes, we do. We have Lisa right there.
I got an email from Jim today. He will not be able to make it.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion to seat Lisa for Jeffrey.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second,
All those in favor, please say aye.
aye.
All right, I don't hear, Christina, was that an aye?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so. All right, motion passes. Lisa, are you listening? Well, I think Lisa's here. She's probably trying to unmute. All right, let's see if we can get Lisa here. Okay. Next is approval of minutes. I know you all felt tricked because the minutes were circulated earlier this month than normal. We're getting our routine down.
Chelsea.
She's getting them to me, and I'm actually remembering to get them out to you now too, so.
It's an exciting moment
Yeah,
in
so
POF history.
do we have
We'll
any
move to,
comments?
Move to
Oh.
accept, and then we can have discussion.
I'll second that.
Yeah, just one small one on page 3, where it says.
Can you talk about which date you're talking
Oh,
about?
this is
Oh, this
October
for
20th.
October 20th, the last one.
Thank
So where it says, it's like in that first copy block, about 5 lines from the bottom, talks about 3 bid minimum and being over specific with bids. I think it should say specs, because what we were
Oh,
talking
okay.
about is.
Over specific with specifications.
Right,
Okay,
right, so.
Mike, I'm here.
thank you, Lisa.
that one.
You know you're on,
That's
in place of Jeff, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments, additions, corrections to the minutes of October 20th?
Really good.
Recommend-
All right, so all those in favor of accepting the minutes as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye. Lisa,
Hi.
thank you. All right, motion passes. Present to speak, public participation is desired and encouraged. Speakers will be limited to time and appropriateness of comments. To maintain progress, stay on topic, and maintain decorum. Anybody in the room present to speak? All right, anybody online? If you are on the Zoom, you can unmute, call out your name. All right, moving on. Old business, budget status, financial report. Hang on just a second, I will put it on the screen. Donna, do you have anything you would like to highlight from your report?
No,
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 you are not concerned about our progress in any areas?
no issues, revenues or expenditures.
Can I ask you a couple things?
Of course.
So one thing I wanted to ask Donna was, is there any way we could get, I know it's not a perfect science, but a projection on how interest income on investments will affect us? Because we're already at a third of the way into the year. We've, whatever, quintupled the, the baseline that we had there. So I'm just wondering if we can project, annually what this in the fiscal year, what maybe a lot of play there. You know, because we're saying, we had 5,000 budgeted, and I
Yes,
know that, you know, the Fed rates were up and stuff, but we have, so we have like, and we have almost 28,000 through October 31st.
Right.
That's like a third of the year, right?
right, 5 months, right?
Four.
July, August, September, October, 4 months. So I would conservatively double it. So figure, round it up to 30,000 and say forecast 60,000.
Okay.
Yeah, we certainly
Things
have a little bit
continue.
of iffiness on where the market
Yeah.
is going.
Yeah,
So we may not see the kind of growth we saw over these 4 months.
Right, I'm
But,
just,
yeah,
Hopefully
Just
we
yeah.
won't
thinking-
invest
Just see
it
month by
heavily in
month
crypto.
what's gonna,
because some of those increases in interest rates and stuff are, you
negative.
know. And then the other question was on license and fees. Have we pretty much seen the extent of the Loves bump? Or is that gonna grow too? Because that's almost double what we.
it
had
is
projected.
growing because the Ruby Road property sold. There's conveyance tax in the license fees and permits, and that was just a little over $100,000.
that's the
So-
property between the bus lot and FedEx.
I heard it referred to as the TA, but I don't know, Mike, what property it is. All I know is a
Across from the
commercial
TA,
property on Ruby Road.
Okay. I had heard that it was the piece between the bus lot and FedEx across from the TA, but maybe I'm mistaken that.
I think you have more information than I do. Mike.
So that would affect like November numbers?
No, that's in the October numbers.
That's in the October. numbers,
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. But as far as other, you know, is it kind of gonna level off now, or do you think there's
Well,
gonna be
if
more?
if there's no surprises in conveyance tax, you know, if an apartment sells and changes hands, then it's gonna be unanticipated revenue.
These are all
for us.
happy surprises.
Hmm.
And the other thing I was gonna ask is, didn't we used to have sort of where we were as far as a percentage of the spending so far into the year? Didn't we have a column, or did I dream that? That sort of said, you know, that you could kind of look at and eyeball it, and if, like, say, for the end of October, if it said more than 33%, you knew you were trending faster. You know what I mean?
Yes, I know what you
Didn't you
mean.
used to have that?
I think I used to have it, and this year I put in the for comparison column, so I have last year's numbers for the end of October.
The good news is that if you consider the year in thirds, because we're 4 months in,
Yes,
we are showing expenses as less than a third of the
Right.
budgeted expenses. So if you do it that way,
Right,
We're
no, I
trending
understand
under.
that, but you have to do that in your head. I thought we used to have
Yes.
this sort of percentage figure. in.
right, I can put a
I'm just
percent,
saying it was,
if that's more like helpful and useful.
yeah, I don't know how
Let's
people
do it.
feel about that. I don't want to, that was just my little,
Steph, I know we've been
Something I
giving you a
noticed.
percentage of taxes collected, and you've been hearing that regularly.
right,
So maybe that's the number.
right.
you're
No, I'm
thinking
kind of
something
talking
like
about like when
Yeah.
we kind of had it in line by line on this report.
Yeah, it was a much more complicated report that wasn't as clear as to what was going on, but it did have the percentages in one of the columns.
I mean, we could do the math in our heads if you really want us to, but but that's dangerous.
okay, any other questions, concerns, et cetera, on the report? Hearing none, I'll say thank you, Donna. This is always a valuable tool for us. Okay. Next item, update from the school building committee representative. I have a couple of updates and then I'll ask Erica, since she was at the meeting last night, if she has anything to add. The public outreach has been going on over the last couple of weeks. There have been more videos and PowerPoints put out. Plus, there was a large gathering at Hall School last week that the public was invited to, where the consultant and the superintendent rolled out a presentation that kind of updates where everything is at this point. And we spent quite a bit of time taking questions from the public. all of that is feeding into the process. There will continue to be more public awareness and fire call. There'll continue to be more public outreach as the steps are going along. There was also the town meeting earlier this week, where the next $100,000 of money to work with consultants and other supporting expenses for the school building committee was passed through the town meeting. The land subcommittee has narrowed options through a lengthy assessment process to the current Hall School site and a privately owned site that would be a potential location for a new school. The town and the landowner have signed a letter of intent or commitment to hold the property while the school building committee and the town continue the process, which keeps the property available should it come to referendum and the taxpayers approve moving in that direction. The chairperson, Catherine, has announced she'll step down as chair effective December 31st due to new work commitments. It's a big loss, but we also look forward to keeping the momentum with whoever takes the helm next. Erica, do you have anything you want to add since you were at the meeting last night?
Yeah, I think from, especially a financial perspective, the only difference is that we gained $100,000 in funding, which brought our balance to 112,000 and some change. And then we had agreed upon last night, the vote by the committee was to spend an additional 27,000, just over 27,000 for phase 2 environmental on the private site. I had some questions about that today, which is why it hasn't gone to Donna. So we'll encumber that money. So we'll bring us just under 100,000 available dollars to spend. And then we did, just so folks know, we'll be working on spreading the word on multiple public presentations that will be in a shorter presentation form to reach the most people. So our superintendent and maybe a member of the committee or two will kind of do some smaller presentations at the library, at the senior center, and other locations around town, and on different days and times during the week, during the day, on a Saturday and a weekend. Our goal is to meet people where they're at.
Sure.
And
Take
get
the
as
show on
much-
the road a little.
Absolutely, and get as much public input. And then Phil and I are working with Donna to get some financial information for projected mill rate impact. And so when we have that, the committee will be doing another larger presentation because those big numbers are going to be important to share with people during this process.
Sure. All right, thank you. Any questions from board members, discussion, anything?
That sounds like a lot. That sounds great.
It's been a long time coming, but we're making some real progress. And our goal, I think it's important to say, we looked at a timeline last night and we're looking at beginning of March referendum date. So all of this is leading up to 1st of February, around the 1st of February, decision by the committee on which of the 2 tracks and narrow it down to renovation. I'll use renovation because the state uses multiple terms. Hall School or a new school and a new site. So those are our 2 paths, narrowing down beginning of February for a beginning of March referendum. So lots of presentations between now and then.
I'm sorry to hear that Catherine has to step down before that, after all this work.
I am too, and I think in many members of the committee feel that way. So I'm happy that she's staying on the committee, and so her voice is valuable. She fills a role as a construction industry person, and so that's by statute that has to be filled. So she brings a lot of valuable insight into the process for us. So we look forward to that.
Ironically, it's that exact work experience that's going to take her away from being chairperson because she
Absolutely.
has some
She
new,
has
very
some
large construction projects she has to
Yes, she
manage.
does.
So
Go Catherine.
But she's worked tirelessly to get us to this point now. So we're in the home stretch to get something to taxpayers for voters and willing to have a final decision.
very good. Anything else? All right, let's move on to item 3, ARPA update. Christina.
Well, we are at a point now where we have stopped taking applications for new projects because we have more there are more requests than there is money remaining. So the next meeting is on Monday. And we have several projects that we've heard over the last couple of months that are probably going to go to a public hearing, probably in December. And I'm trying to think of what else there is to tell you. There's the reporting system. There was a little hiccup with that, but it's working now. And I think Donna's been able to start creating the reports that the state needs. And yeah, that's it. I mean, I don't know the date for when this public hearing will be, but there are several projects that we need to talk about, and not all of them will be fully funded. Some might be partially funded, some might not be funded at all, because we just don't have enough money to fund them all. So it's gonna require some weighing of priorities and things like that for the commission. So
Okay.
we'll see.
I have a couple questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've talked a little bit in past meetings about reviewing expenses, concerns about making sure expenses weren't getting added to projects that might have been part of daily operating and,
Yep.
and might not fit the criteria. Does that process of sort of sampling and reviewing those, does that continue?
Yeah, and actually we didn't have I'd say the first couple of projects that we closed, we didn't have a process for reviewing, but now we do. Now we put the projects on the agenda for when they are ready to be closed. And Donna's going to run an expense report for us so that we can see it, so we can review that before the project's closed. And otherwise, we're not really looking at the projects in detail up until that point, unless there's a reason to. There's somebody, either the person managing the project or somebody else that has a question about it, but it's not, reviewing it as we go along is not really a part of the process.
Yeah, I didn't really think that was intended to be. My only concern, as we talk about this in Board of Finance, is the continual rumblings we hear about auditing, about, needing to look at our things following the criteria. And a lot of it is because of what we've heard in the news about other towns having made glaring mistakes, or people in other towns having made glaring mistakes. So it's just good to hear that you have a little bit of a review process as you're closing each project to say,
Yeah.
we've looked at it to make sure there wasn't anything that's an obvious error, because we know that our auditing firm, they've already changed their fees to us because they plan on doing additional tests for the ARPA process. So we know it's going to get reviewed, and that's the right thing to do. So if we do a good process of being ready for that, then hopefully there isn't much for them to find.
Yeah. So far, the projects that have been closed have been pretty straightforward with one or two expenses, and it's usually whatever the thing is there's one cost to buy the thing. So it hasn't been complicated, but there are several projects that are open that maybe there's some gray areas on. So, but when we get there, we'll cross that bridge.
Very good. Let's see. And then, is there any kind of guidance in the ARPA program for kind of when you get to the end of it? Like how you sort of close it out, or is there some sort of there's nothing? No.
Well, yeah, there's not really.
There's no end report you
I
have
think
to
we're a
do?
ways away from that. We're quite a way away from that.
Yeah.
Well, just if there was a particular thing that was going to be required, we might need to be starting to plan for it now, but I guess there's not.
Yeah, I guess that's a good question for Donna, because she's the one who's been in the reporting software and seen what they ask for, but I don't know of any right now.
I didn't see anything stand out in the final rule
Okay.
per se. And the final reporting will come after the last of the expenditures, which
Right.
has to be by December 31st, 2026.
Yeah,
Um,
so it could be
and I
way
think
out.
we're only expected probably to have a couple of projects that they linger out that long.
Yeah. I just know from some of the grants we've gotten in town before, like the fire department's got some grants from FEMA. They had a very specific report at the end that you had to. It wasn't so much the financials, because that was done all along, but you had to sort of do a closeout and you had to make certain promises. Like things that you purchased through that grant, you had to promise to do certain things with them or dispose of them in a certain way when they're worn out and stuff, so.
Mhm.
Curious if there was anything that came along with this or if there isn't.
Well, one of the things that's kind of, might be involved that I'm wondering about is the small business grants. Because will those businesses be required to, offer up some information that fits under this assessments thing or this?
Will they have to tell you how they made out with the money? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
If it helped them? Any ideas?
I don't think that they do. That was, just in general, I think that these ARPA funds are not as restrictive as a lot of the grants that we typically receive. And I don't think that there is a complicated reporting like that at the end. But especially with those funds that went to the businesses, it was pretty much, the EDC, they are the ones who really went through it all, but they didn't require a lot of information up front from the businesses. So I don't think they're gonna require it on the back end either.
All right, any other?
Yeah, you said that there was some reporting issues. I was just wondering if those were state software reporting issues or issues that are on our end. Maybe that's a Donna question.
That's a Donna question.
Yeah, nice way to kick that.
It was, well, I know it was getting access to it was the
Okay.
problem. Like it was a password or
Oh,
something.
The state has the pass-through.
all right, so
US
there's a
Treasury.
federal
We
reporting?
need to work with US Treasury and
right.
we needed to report by April. But neither
We-
Donna nor I could access.
Got it.
Donna were the only,
Yeah.
and I were the only two who could access.
I've
And I
just
had to be able
found
to
that-
access to change people to be able to access, so it was a nightmare. And at the time, we made a change in how it would be handled, having my office assist Donna's office. US Treasury announced that they were really cutting back to almost no support for the reporting mechanisms that had been set up. But we gained, the good news is we gained access to the system, and so we started to report, but it was a matter of it being a federal issue and put in a ticket that seemed to go nowhere, an IT ticket to nowhere.
Well, I've just dealt with a lot of federal and state IT departments, and that's why I was suspicious that it was on their end.
Yeah, we knew enough people at the state, I think we would have been able to get help, but no one at the state could help us.
Hmm.
And they had absolutely nothing to do with it whatsoever, so it was merely on the federal level. And a lot
Imagine
of
the
it was
poor
because we
few
changed
people
email
who are
address.
left supporting that program, if they've cut the support, the few people who are left are probably trying to cover this all over the country.
Yeah, and so the biggest issue was that we changed from a .org to a .gov on the town side. Donna and I had set up our accounts using our active email address .org. When it changed to .gov, it became problematic. I don't think either Donna nor I could explain what Kelsey did, but through some magic of her young expertise, we've gotten in there and we've made the appropriate changes and we now have access, so.
Very good. Anything else on the ARPA?
I don't think so.
All right, let's move on to the Talmadge Estate purchase update. Would you like to speak?
Sure. I'm Kathy Demers. I'm the chairperson of the Conservation Commission. I wanted to give you a bit of an update on the Talmadge Estate property purchase and the deed grant award. In June, the town received our letter from the state of Connecticut, and we're told that we were approved for a grant award of $18,250 toward the $125,000 cost of the Talmadge Estate property. So that was equivalent to a 65% match. We had anticipated and hoped for at least a 50% match. so we were-
Did you just say 18 or 81?
Oh,
She said
Said
18.
81.
but-
All right,
Sorry.
so,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
I, when I was moderating, I did exactly the same thing. Apparently, dyslexia gets to me.
and so the reason for the handout.
Yeah.
So yes, we received $81,250. And Mike, by the way, I did just send you a copy of this.
Okay,
I hadn't thought about people being, members being online,
okay,
but you'll have a copy if you want to send this to them later.
Okay.
If you want to look at it.
Thank you.
So we still have to work through a few steps before DEEP will release the money. We're hoping that that's going to be happening before the spring. We have to, we had done, they have to approve that. We have to update our title search and add them to the title insurance because we have closed on the property. And we also have to sign a conservation easement that the state requires so that it has public access and so on. So there's going to be a few more steps before we release the money, but we're anticipating that will happen. So the question the commission has for the board is how much of that $81,250 grant will be returned back to the reserve fund and the open space fund? Because we're trying to plan ahead what will be in the open space fund. And just for a little background information, I provided that to you in this handout. When we had originally come to CIP for our request regarding the land, the total request was for $161,000, which included $125,000 for the land. And then we anticipated up to $36,000 for any other costs involved with the purchase, including things like the survey and other legal costs. The CIP plan and town meeting appropriations, it was decided that $101,000 would come from the reserve fund and $60,000 from the open space fund that would be used toward just the land purchase. It's, for the land purchase and the associated costs. And they anticipated at that time that the revenue from the grant would be $62,500. We did close on the property in June, and at that time, the expenditures just for the land at closing, $101,000 came from the reserve fund, and then $24,000 from the allotted $60,000 came from the open space fund. So I'm showing you there how much of the expenditures came from each fund. So 81% of the $125,000 came from the reserve fund and 19% came from the open space fund. Do you have any questions at this point about that? And then we discussed this again at our commission meeting last night, and we discussed that a possible option the town or the Board of Finance could consider when they receive the grant and get the money is to reimburse each of the funds on a pro rata basis. So because 81% was expended on the land, again, because the grant came from the town, from the state, it's only for the purchase of the land. That's all that they will give you back. So we were wondering if the Board of Finance would consider reimbursing the open space fund 19% of the award, since that's how much was taken from the open space fund for the purchase price of the land.
So what you're saying is essentially the grant award would pay back each of the two sources in the same percentage that the two sources funded the project.
Correct.
Okay, so I do have a question in the $36,000 number that was originally budgeted, that was for up to $36,000 for the associated fees. How did that end up actually playing out? You're saying it played out at 24,000. Is that true?
No, that's the
No, that
land.
was no. So the cost so far from the open space fund, Donna just ran some numbers for us. So we've expended from that $60,000 in the open space funds that was appropriated. for this purchase. We've spent a total of $42,842.
Okay,
Okay, $24,000 of that was for the land, and the rest were for the survey and other legal costs to date.
okay, so what was that number again? That was, 42.
$42,842 have been expended.
okay, so 18,000 of it went to survey, legal, et cetera.
Correct. to the
Rough
survey.
numbers, 18,000. So there's still 18,000 out of your original budget that you didn't use.
Correct.
And then there's also $18,000 more, well, whatever this extra amount is over the, we'd anticipated
So
62.5, so there's another almost $18,000, a little over $18,000 greater revenue from the grant.
from the
Okay.
grant than anticipated.
Right,
Mhm. So the current open space balance right now, after those expenditures, is $57,521.
so the question really is,
Started at 60 and now we're at 57. Before anything
no.
started, you were at 60 or?
No, that, when we originally came to Board of Finance and CIP, there was about $65,000 in the open space fund.
All right,
There has been some revenue that has come in that's not related to the
Right.
grant. And that was from, in fee of lieu, fee in
Lieu
lieu of
fees.
properties developed.
Yeah.
And also 490 penalties. So I believe there was about $35,000 that came back into the open space fund from Donna's report. And then there's a little bit of interest, maybe $63 on the money that's in there. So we have only expended $42,842 for this purchase from that.
so you've expended 42,000, you want 15,000 back?
Well, we're talking about, yeah, doing it on a prorated basis for the grant money that's come back.
All right.
So because.
so go ahead.
Because 19% of the cost of the land came from the open space fund,
Sure,
we're suggesting that 19% of the grant award go back into the open space fund.
so I guess before we talk about the merits of where it goes, in my mind, there's a procedural question.
Mhm.
When we get grant awards like this, is there a specific path that money is supposed to take? I want to make sure we understand that first before we talk about divvying it up. Like, is that supposed to go all to the open space fund, or is that supposed to go back into the general
The
fund?
path
or-
is to go with reimbursement money is that you put it back to where the expenditure came from. So this is the logical path.
So dividing it in percentages
Yes.
equal to how the project was funded follows
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Question. When the anticipated revenue was 62,500, what percentage of that 62,500 grant money was going back to the open fund?
I don't think we ever even talked about the,
So
So
because
that
The original plan.
19% of the larger number, what was it 19% of the 62.5 that was anticipated to go back?
When we originally looked at this, we were anticipating a 50% match.
Correct.
Which would have been 62.5.
Correct.
But we got more than anticipated.
Right, so let's pretend that the additional never came.
Yeah.
If that 62,500 came to us and that was all,
Mhm.
how was that money to be appropriated?
I
What
think the
was the
same way it
discussion?
would be 19%.
Was that the case? It was still going to be the contribution percentage to each side?
I don't remember that we specified it, only because I think we knew we had to follow some rule, which is the rule you just told us about.
Yes, but in the CIP, I think we put the reimbursement all to the reserve fund. I would have to look at the
Yes,
CIP.
I think you're right, now that you're saying that, so yes, so I believe the CIP plan did say that the anticipated revenue from the grant was 62.5, and that was to go back in
In the reserve.
But that was early planning before we knew about these two sources.
But this split covers that.
Sure, it adds a
And then
little
some.
additional, correct?
Okay,
And just to clarify my own mind, this is that Mason Road property that filled in the keyhole?
Yes,
Got it,
Yeah.
thank you.
yeah, it was 16 acres that was added on to the rest of the town's open space property.
So another procedural question then. What's the right procedure for actually memorializing this information?
I don't think it's an action item for the Board of
I-
Finance.
Well, that's what I was thinking. If this is the normal process, then when the money goes in, really it would get you would process it in the finance office in those percentages, right? Because that matches the percentages of how it was funded.
Right.
Okay, so we don't need a motion.
No,
We're
I
just
don't
being
think it's
made
an action
aware.
item. I think you just give your support.
There's 2 thumbs up,
Yeah,
good.
Sounds entirely logical.
Yeah, I can just say if that's the normal
Yes.
procedure, then right, and that's what, when Kathy emailed me, I said, this is a great thing for it to talk about. I don't know the answer, but let's talk about it.
We
Okay,
spend so much time talking about where money comes from and not where it goes back to.
right,
So,
right. So we're all set.
We're all set.
Any other questions or discussion while we're on it?
Well, is this like sort of cementing a policy that makes sense? Because like next time, would we do the same kind of thing if we had grant money coming back for an open space purchase?
Like, I think what Donna is saying is this is already how we do grant award money.
It's already.
Okay.
submitted.
Yes, it's our procedure. Not our policy, but it's our procedure.
Okay,
It's our audit procedure. To put money back when you get reimbursement. To put it back.
In accordance to how it was funded out.
Yes,
Okay,
and the Conservation Commission is happy with the way it's turned out, so.
You know, that would be very helpful to have somebody go back into the open space
Sure,
fund, obviously.
sure.
And, you know,
Great.
and helps us also to plan ahead, you know, when we do our CIP request.
okay. Any other questions? Thoughts? All right, let's move along. Thank you, Kathy. I did forward the email too with this to everybody, so if you want to refer to it afterwards. Okay, new business, Schofield Road drainage request for CIP funds.
Yes, thank you. So I'll start with saying our public works director is taking some much needed vacation, or he would be here speaking to this as well. So if you recall, there was a CIP request, a long-standing CIP request to fix some drainage on Schofield Road.
Since the beginning of CIP.
Pretty much since the beginning of time. And so it is a very extensive project that needs to be done. And we all know that some of that is why this has been around and in request form since the 1990s. So the current CIP plan had $35,000 in fiscal year 22-23 for engineering for this project. And then the original request was $360,000 to complete the project. The actual CIP plan has over the next 2 years, 2 and 3 of the current plan, $50,000 each year towards this project. But our first step was to do some engineering so that we could determine what the whole project would be. So we first started with our town engineer, who indicated that this project was too large in scale, and he recommended that we go out to an outside firm.
For
So
design, for design.
for design.
Gotcha.
And so we did that, thinking we have 35,000, that would cover the engineering. The initial conversations we began having made it very clear that the engineering for this could be somewhere in the $100,000 plus for actual engineering. So the request before you is for 16,500 of the 35,000 to contract with Beta Group, who is a CROG approved vendor that we're using for a couple of other projects. We went out to them, they came out and looked at the project with us, and the 16,500 would include some data collection and base mapping for us. It would include a conceptual design of the project, an opinion of cost of the entire project, helping with rights of way that will be needed in this project, and then coordination and funding assistance. They believe that we could work to get a reclassification of Schofield Road that might make it eligible for a lot SIP grant through projects. So our goal is to try to get some real grant funding to make this project actually happen for the first time in over 30 years. So this is the first step, and 16,500 of the 35 would be for this, opinion of cost and conceptual design. And then we would have some real solid figures to come to CIP with for engineering and then the final project. I will just give you some insight that some of the numbers that we're hearing, I indicated we're probably looking at more than $100,000 of potential engineering. And these were just figures that were tossed out by multiple folks, not just Beta. This project could be in the $2 million range, not the $350,000 range. But I think for a long time, no one has had a real design for this project. And thus we've been using a very generic number, and Carl agreed with some of that assessment. And I might argue that $350,000 in the 1990s is over $2 million today. So it's a much larger project than we thought, but got some real good information and some real solid commitment from Beta to be able to help us to work on things like reclassifying that road and having it be eligible for some other projects, some other grant funds available through CROG or the state. So that's a plus. So I'm not asking for the entire 35,000. I don't believe we need that now. I would encourage that to, stay in that fund and be part of a larger pool of money for other projects, including the future engineering for this project.
You mean reclassify it for this project, for this part?
Yes,
Reclassify
so
for the, it might be pertinent.
reclassifying the road so that it would be
Grant.
eligible for grants like LOTSIP. So when we looked at the current LOTSIP project we got funding for, the type of road that is eligible limited our roads in town to the state roads. It didn't make any of our local roads eligible for LOTSIP. But the amount of traffic on this and where it sits and how it connects, the folks at Beta really believe that this road could be reclassified and offered assistance with us in trying to help that. And so we're working with them. We want to partner with them to do that, because if it can make the road eligible for future funding grants, I think that's important for us to be able to get the project actually completed after all these years. And if we can take some of the burden off Willington taxpayers. Obviously, the dollars come from taxpayers, but it's some of that money that goes to the state, hopefully coming back to us. And there's a lot of federal dollars out there through current funding. And so if we can utilize some of those as well. So I think there's lots of ways, but it is a very complex project, and we've heard it talked about for many years. So.
So do you need a motion from us tonight, or
Yes.
is this something we're gonna come
No.
back to?
Yeah,
see
yeah.
after
Before we-
So in your memo, there is a suggested.
I just have a question before we say the
Right.
motion.
Right, well, that's up to you, right? So I encourage, I ask you to consider a recommendation to have the Board of Selectmen call a town meeting to spend this $16,500.
This says LOSIP, you've also talked about LOTSIP.
Correct, two
Um,
different things.
LOSIP is the right acronym for this motion.
Correct.
Okay,
So
I just
LOSIP
wanted,
is the fund that was predetermined from the CIP plan.
yes,
That's where we funded this through LOSIP.
I just, because you were talking about LOTSIP eligibility, I just want to make sure we're supposed to be using LOSIP for this one.
Yeah.
Okay,
Use
LOSIP,
low sub
low
funds to
dollars,
get
lots of bigger
funds.
money.
yes.
Can we move-
leads to LOTSIP?
Yes.
can we move this one?
Yes.
Okay.
Would you like to,
Sure. The Board of Finance would like to recommend that the Board of Selectmen call a town meeting to appropriate 16,500 from the Capital Projects Fund LOSIP, Schofield Road Drainage Phase 1 for engineering to contract with Beta Group, Inc. to provide a concept plan and an opinion of cost development, which will be reimbursed by the state of Connecticut Local Capital Improvement Program.
second? Discussion on the motion?
Question. This consultation for 16,000 and change, what's the shelf life on the information obtained? Seeing that this is dragged
Good
out for
question.
30 years, you know, if we get this information, how long do we have before we have to we have to move on it, act on it?
That's a great question. I think we won't have had this larger concept to start with. So it's a big step. I think the thing that would change the most, if it sat longer, is the opinion of cost, right? So that is where I think you have the most fluctuation in cost for the project. But the rights of way and the conceptual design, I think that all has, that is a shelf life that will last quite a while, right? So the design it's gonna be pretty set. And the biggest decider is where the water goes. As it
Yeah.
comes down that hill, where's it gonna go? We have to interact with the state. So in my opinion, and I don't have a clear answer for you, I think the opinion of cost that will come out of this will be the one thing that will not hold as long as the process. So the conceptual design, I don't see changing.
And as far as the design is concerned, I mean, I would imagine to apply for this grant, we would have to make some major changes to the road as it sits currently, probably installing traffic lights,
Right.
widening the road.
This is drainage.
Right, but in order to get the grant money from the state to change the use of that particular road.
So the opinion of the folks at Beta is not, it's a reclassification based on usage. And so I don't believe it would require traffic lights. That's not, those aren't things that would change the classification
Gotcha.
of the road.
Okay.
So, no, I don't anticipate any additional changes to the road as a result. And look, it may not be able to happen, but they seemed pretty positive.
Okay.
Based on the research they had done on the road, because before they came out to meet with us, they did their own homework on the situation and came to us with some things that matched a little bit what we've been talking about in-house. Could we possibly be able to source for funding? And came to us with some of those options, but we knew we couldn't go to LOTSIP because of the classification of the road. And their opinion was that we believe we can work with CROG and that could change.
Okay.
So that's a huge plus.
And as I understand it, a couple of the items that are being considered maybe is traffic count
Yes.
and the fact that it feeds across a town line. So it's actually sort of a feeder,
Connector.
a connector road, I guess. Yeah, I don't know all the terminology. People come from another town, cut through that road to get to a main road, to get to a highway.
It's a connector from 190 to Route 32. So
Right.
if you're Stafford.
Okay.
And so the bulk of the traffic actually doesn't come out of Wellington.
Yeah, it's people coming through from Stafford, yeah.
Could-
Or from Wellington going to Stafford.
Could I just while we're talking about big projects of this scope, and priorities of them, how does Village Hill fit into this?
So if I may, I know it's outside the topic of the motion on the floor, but we're actually actively working on a grant that I think we have a pretty good chance at. That could get that done in one spell swoop instead of piecemeal. So stay tuned. Troy and Don and I met this week talking about preparing for a grant that just got moved from February to April. So I'm hoping by springtime, we can tell you that we've gotten some funding to actually complete that.
Thank you. I do think it's pertinent because if we're making a choice
Yes.
of one over the other, that could affect this
Yeah.
vote.
Yeah, and we both, right now, we have them side by side. We already had money set aside for Troy and Public Works to do some of the drainage. And so as he was preparing to start working on that this spring, another grant, a TRIP grant became available. And then the state actually made a change to the roads that were allowable use. And so now Village Hill is eligible for that funding. So we need a lot more information on Schofield Road to begin to move in the direction of grant funding. And I think it's too large for that TRIP grant. And we're not quite there. We have more information on this end. So we're making some final engineering moves so that we can have a grant ready to go in the early spring. And hopefully Village Hill can be done in a much different manner than we had originally anticipated, and if we can use these funds to parlay into, so even if it's phased work, into some grant funds to take the burden off of Wellington taxpayers, and a couple of projects that have been out there for a long time. I'm excited at some forward movement.
All right, so let's get back to this motion. Any other questions on this motion? Christina or Lisa, you're all set? Okay. Anything else here? No? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Lisa? All right, so then you better do a roll call.
Joseph,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Stephanie? Yes. Christina,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Mike?
Yes. Thank you. Motion passes. Okay,
I have a question.
yes,
If we do a roll call afterwards and everyone says yes, do I still have to write everyone say no?
you can just say all yes, motion passes. Yeah. I just, because we didn't initially get an answer from Lisa, I wanted to go.
Yeah, I understand.
We were getting away, we just sort of. Okay. Some change here. Okay, item 2, new business, re-engagement of the town's emergency services efficiency committee. Would you like to make any comments?
Yeah, we're gonna be meeting tomorrow night at 6 PM right here. Mike's gonna be running the camera for me. But I think our main goal is to figure out where we are after almost 3 years and reestablish some communication and begin the CIP process for the two departments. Make sure that they're compatible requests, and then there's no surprises. I think that's the main goal, is that one department doesn't surprise the other department in either direction, and neither department surprises the town. I think that, and then figure out what our goals are going forward, and I have some thoughts on that, but I think I'm gonna share them with the committee first.
I just wanted to focus on the Mike's gonna run the camera part of this.
Yeah.
Are we set up for that? Like there's already.
It's an in-person only, but we're gonna be recording
Okay,
It'll be a Zoom for one.
Zoom for one.
okay.
So it's in person only, but we have the capability to record the
So
meeting, and I think it's
the-
important to do so.
So there'll be a
It'll
link,
Zoom link.
there'll be a link available. I can log in and
It'll-
open it
Should be
up.
just like today.
Yeah.
We'll be good.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, all I had to do was log in. It took me 3 times with the password and I got it right.
Same thing.
Yeah, okay. Anything else? Any questions from
No.
anybody on that?
The agenda should have gone out Tuesday, I think, and I.
It did
filed
go
with
out.
the- I filed it with clerk.
Awesome.
On my desk. but I don't know.
Okay, back to present to speak. Any, oh, you have a
What
question?
about did you wanted to add anything about the calendars?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. So I emailed out to the board members, I forgot to put on the agenda, the calendars for 2023. I don't think it's particularly controversial, except I made one error.
You have to make
Oh
a
my
motion to
God.
put it on the agenda. before you-
So I'm going to make a motion to put it on the agenda.
Wow, is there an echo in here?
Yes, I was coming to that. I would like to move to add an item to new business, item number 3. 2023 calendars for the Board of Finance.
Second. Oh, I'm sorry, Pete.
No, go ahead. It's all yours.
Any,
This is a controversial issue.
Yes.
okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
I.
Okay, we got a unanimous ayes there. Okay, so now let's go to that item number 3 on new business. I emailed out the calendars to everyone. There was one error. I have the last budget meeting that says only if needed is too late, because it cuts into the required dates to post the stuff, the online advertisements for the public.
March
meetings.
23rd and March 30th or.
The
two
last
votes, two
one,
weeks, just
the
so-
last one is only.
So we drop it? from-
So we would either drop it or we'd have to move it earlier. I say we just drop it from the calendar, and if we somehow end up in the budget season dragging on, we'll call a special meeting,
There
right?
we go.
Right.
So the March 23rd is too late.
No.
No,
30th.
30th.
March 30th.
March 30th is the date your legal warning for the budget hearing needs to be actually in the newspapers. Can't have a meeting that same night.
Right.
Too late, already needs to be in the paper that same day. You started the referendum and you go back words and back your way
Yes.
into it. So my suggestion to Mike was you could start earlier, you could add a day that wasn't a Thursday if you needed, or.
We can.
My feeling is just cross that last date out, and if we're running out of time, we'll call a special meeting.
There you go. I heartily second that idea. How's that?
Other discussion on the calendars? Okay. So I move that the calendars be accepted with the exception of removing the March 30th date from the budget
Second,
calendar.
second.
All right, any more discussion on the calendars? All right, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Lisa? She's clicking, trying to unmute. Click, click, click.
Yes, sorry. Aye.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, so motion passes unanimously. I will make that one correction on the budget calendar, and then I will redistribute it to everybody and send it to
To the
the
town clerk.
town clerk for publication. Thank you all for that. Okay, now we're at present to speak. Anybody in the room? Anybody online like this? Oh, you want, all right. I'll wait for board members. Hang on. Anyone online? Mouse is unmuted. Anyone online present to speak? All right, Stephanie.
Yes, I just wanted to comment on, Erica's urging us as a board to meet in person in the future, which I think, generally speaking, I think it's really great to be around the table. It's easier to make eye contact and to hear each other and everything. My concern is that Tallinn County has dwelled in the caution zone for months now. I'm in another community group that meets on Tuesdays, and we have to mask up. So I just want to say that, it's an individual decision for people. I know I just would stop short of making it more than a recommendation, because there are people who work with high risk, populations like Lisa does in a nursing home and things like that. That I just think it's still got some personal side to it that people need to feel safe with it. And wherever you are with COVID and vaccinations, no vaccinations or whatever, and masking, I do feel like when we mask up, it's hard, it warps the sound. It's hard for me to hear people when they're speaking with the mask. So, I just want to mention that, just leave some wiggle room in case folks have something, a personal reason for not being able to do it. And the other thing I would ask is, as we do this, and hopefully we'll be meeting in person during a lot of the budget season, can we go back to getting packets?
That's
Or-
that's your board.
Yeah. That's it.
It's not us.
So,
Yeah.
because that's just like a really good assist, and
Yeah, so we can't really go back and forth in present to speak, but I'll comment in.
Oh,
board.
okay.
I'll-
Oh.
how's that?
talk to you later.
Anything else for present to speak? Oh,
Ralph?
No, sorry, I wasn't muted.
So here we are, good and welfare. I'm sorry, I skipped communications. You guys have everything.
Okay.
So good and welfare. Yes, I agree on us needing to take a careful approach to all in person. We'll try to continue to be thoughtful about that. The sound quality is the best when we're all in the same room, for sure. And as far as getting packets of information, I think back when we used to do that, we were all in the room and we came in and the secretary had been here for half an hour before we got here and had little packets with all the information in front of us. Those were very practical back then. So we'll probably start working our way back towards it, but one of the things that's challenging is knowing how many people are gonna be here, because it's a lot of printing sometimes. But I will try to get us back towards that kind of a thing, especially as we go into budget season. It'll be really critical for you to have, the last 3 budget seasons, I guess. 22, 21, and 20. Yeah, the last 3 budget seasons, we've been doing it at home on our own computers. Yes, we'll work
And there's
towards
some
that.
diminishing returns on that, because
Yeah.
if you have an 8.5 by 11 printer,
Yeah.
some of this stuff ends up being 3-point type. I mean, below
Yeah.
agate, so
Yeah.
it's worse than box scores.
I mean, the
I
scan
am.
key.
I fortunately have an 11 by 17
Oh, get
printer,
out of here.
but I don't necessarily want to blow through all my
Now
ink
he's
and paper.
printing forever.
It's too late. You pulled the right.
But they're all over the place in budget season, everywhere. Okay, anything else for good and welfare?
I'm good.
Go.
I'm just good. Oh,
No,
move to adjourn.
second. All those in favor say aye and
Aye.
wave goodbye.
I.
I.
Football started.
Aye. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, and you're kind of running a lot of games going on.
I.